It's a terrible situation for many prospective homeowners in China. Having invested their savings in their dream home, they are now faced with the possibility that it may never be built. Now, paying a part of the cost of a new home is how the majority of homes are sold in China. The idea is that builders use this money, along with loans from other sources, to build the house. But instead, most builders have used this money to keep investing in new projects without finishing the ones they already have. And in the past 2 years, with access to easy loans drying up due to government regulations, builders are out of cash and saddled with huge debts. But the eventual price is being paid by homeowners. With their savings dried up, many have no choice but to move into unfinished properties they have paid for.
This has been Ms. Xu's home for the past 6 months. She bought this apartment off plan 3 years ago, but the property developer went into financial difficulty and construction on the project stopped. With the deposit paid in advance and monthly mortgage payments going out, Ms. Xu eventually had no other option than to move into her unfinished flat.
It feels like suddenly crashing from paradise back to the ground. All my family's assets are invested in this place.
Living conditions here are dire. Xu and about 20 other buyers who live in the unfinished tower blocks share a makeshift outdoor toilet. There is no electricity or heating and no running water, so residents have to fetch it from a tap in the communal courtyard.
When we buy water to drink, we save the bottles, so we can fill them up here. We had no choice. When we moved in here, we had to set up a water pipe for all of us. We flat owners wash our clothes and our hair here.
Ms. Xu and the other homeowners are hoping that their presence here will put pressure on the building company.
It's not easy for ordinary people like us to buy a house in their lifetime, so we have to fight for our rights and interests.
They're not alone in their fight. In the first half of 2022, stalled building projects accounted for nearly 4% of the country's housing market. After recent mass protests, the Chinese government announced measures to bail out failing property firms. Ms. Xu and her fellow homeowners can only hope that this may help get construction on their properties started again.
And DW China analyst Clifford Coonan joins me in the studio for more. Clifford, welcome. How likely is it that Mrs. Xu will ever get her home finished?
Well, I think in this particular case, she probably will get her project finished because she's made a fuss and she's been quite high profile. But I don't think she's in any way typical. We're talking about stalled projects that amount to 4% of a housing market, which itself accounts for 30% of China's total economy. These are massive numbers. And 90% of all plans of all housing in China is bought off the plan before it's even built. So you're talking about a massive problem, and the idea that all of these unfinished buildings are going to be unfinished houses are going to be finished anytime soon is very, very difficult to imagine. I think she's really she's not going to be typical. I think it depends who you are. I think it depends where you are, because regional issues play a big factor here. It depends what kind of ability you have to push your case. So I don't think she's going to be in any way typical.
But what about the building companies themselves? Do they even have the cash to be able to try and complete a project?
Well, that's it. In short answer is no. And that's where a lot of the problem is. They've pledged all this money. They pre-sold all these apartments. They've pledged all this money to build these apartments. And now they're in a position where they can't deliver. So we've seen the government has said that it will lend $30 billion towards helping these projects get finished. But that really is a drop in the ocean. They haven't paid suppliers. They haven't paid all the way down the chain that is involved in creating a finished apartment. There's missing money. So it's a myriadic problem that is spreading across the whole of the real estate sector. And they don't have any access to new money as well because the economy is slower. You've got the zero COVID policy, which means that the Chinese economy is now growing slower than the rest of Asia for the first time in 30 years. We have all these new factors at play, which didn't exist when all of these plans were made.
So you have a situation in which firms appear over-leveraged in debt. They don't have the cash to complete projects, and some 2 million unfinished homes across China. Does the Communist Party see this as a potential problem?
I think it does on one level. It recognises that when people are doing things like not wanting to pay their mortgages, that this could be potentially destabilising. On the other hand, though, I think there is a belief in a way that China has become kind of addicted to growth, that it's been growing for so strongly for so many years that it kind of believes there's going to be enough dynamism in the economy to keep things going, and that eventually that this problem will kind of work itself out, that the project may not be finished this year, but maybe next year. Now, there are precedents for why this could happen. We had maybe 10 years ago, when the housing boom was really taking off, you had whole cities that were ghost cities beside new port facilities or whatever. And and I visited those places, and everything. There was even money in the ATM machines, and there was nobody in the whole city. Those cities filled up. But that was a different period. That was when the economy was growing double-digit percentages every year. So they're going to have a problem there.
Clifford, I'd like to talk about another aspect of China's housing market, one where, unlike what we are seeing here, homeowners do have some control over where they live, even if it means quite literally in the middle of a car park.
Two houses like islands, set in a sea of a shopping mall car park. What looks like a scene from a surreal movie is not an uncommon sight in China.
It may look strange to you, but these houses have been here forever. It's nothing extraordinary.
The owners of these homes are protected by a law that stipulates that it's illegal to demolish a house by force without the owner's agreement. And they seem undeterred by the concrete jungle that's sprung up around them.
This year we didn't plant anything. Normally there are flowers everywhere.
The owner has no intention of leaving.
I'm in my 60s. I've always lived here. I was born here.
Nail houses, as they're known in China, have become symbols of resistance against large-scale developments and China's rapid urbanization. They can be found all over the country, sandwiched between highway flyovers or surrounded by high-rise apartment blocks, like this home in Hangzhou. Its owners have been waiting for a relocation offer for 3 years now. In the meantime, they're happy to remain on their little island in the midst of a mega city.
Clifford, we've both seen projects in China where once the government decides something has to be done, individual choice, a homeowner's choice, is irrelevant. They just essentially have to go. What explains then these nail houses?
Well, people are very attached to their properties, perhaps more so than in other countries, because there's no other way of saving money. You've no other ways of saving money for your pension, for healthcare, for education. It's all tied up with property because it's the main investment vehicle for the ordinary person in China. So people become very attached to it, and as we've seen in the report, reluctant to give it up. Increasingly, the government is less likely to push people out because of the optics are bad, and it's destabilizing. And the days where they were backing the real estate companies without any qualms are probably gone, because the real estate companies have shown themselves to be a lot less reliable than they appeared to be 10 years ago, when the real estate companies were driving all the growth in China. So I think the whole notion of the nail houses, these individual bizarre-looking scenarios, it's very easily explained when you see how people are attached to these properties.
It's interesting what you're saying. So moving forward, we are seeing lesser influence, if you like, from the real estate companies in driving China's growth and more government control? Is that what we're looking at?
I think so. I mean, I think the days where the real estate companies can do what they want, and it's not just in real estate. We've seen it in the technology sector. We've seen it in education. We've seen it in lots of different sectors where the government is saying that the days of untrammeled growth, the days of where you have a free hand to do whatever, are over.
We'll leave it there. Clifford Coonan, thanks so much for coming into the studio and breaking that down for us.